We've come a long way now, and you should be starting to become familiar with many of the types and tools available in the Foundation framework to write modern applications. We're going to finish this section by introducing you to the full Xcode application. You'll then be using your new knowledge to develop your first networked command line tool application for macOS. Up until this point, we have only been working in Xcode playgrounds. However, Xcode is of course a large and powerful integrated development environment. It has a huge number of features, and it's possible to use Xcode professionally for years without discovering all of them. With access to the full Xcode suite of tools, you'll be able to write complex applications, more than just a single file. You'll have access to the LLDB debugger, a tool we'll explore properly in a later session. With access to the full Xcode suite of tools, you'll be able to now write complex applications, more than just a single file. You'll have access to the LLDB debugger, a tool we'll briefly introduce here, and explore more deeply in a later session. Xcode also has built-in tools for source code management, including Git. Xcode is the tool used for all professional development on Apple platforms. It's also used to develop graphical user interfaces, although this is a huge topic in itself and not something we can fully explore right now. In this section, we're just going to get started creating your first full Xcode command line tool project. The best way to get started is to get exploring. We'll cover the following topics. In the following videos, we'll cover creating a command line tool target type Xcode project and adding some files to it. Then we'll go on and look at existing command line tool applications. In the following videos, we'll cover creating a command line tool target type Xcode project and adding some files to it. Then we'll go on and look at a sample command line tool application from Apple and explore its structure. We'll look at the project panel, which contains all of the top-level information about your application. We'll take a quick look at the info panel, build settings, targets, and adding targets. Then we'll move on to running the sample application. We'll look at how schemes allow you to customize running a target, in particular sample runtime arguments. Finally, we'll do a quick introduction to the LLDB debugger. We'll cover the important essentials that will allow you to fix errors in your code and work more productively. Before we begin, let's highlight one essential file that must exist in all Swift projects. Main.swift is the entry point to your application and contains the code that executes it. It functions in the same way as the single file Swift scripts you've been writing up until now, executing from top to bottom. This is also where you will define your run loop. A quick piece of design advice is always to keep this file small. It should only be the entry point to the rest of your code. Apple maintains a large collection of sample code projects on their developer website at the above URL. Also, you'll discover these projects are linked from the Xcode documentation browser, in particular from higher-level programming guide sections. In order to explore a larger sample project, we'll be taking a look at an example command line tool from Apple. It's called AV Foundation Exporter, and is a simple tool that makes use of the AV Foundation Media Framework to provide some simple media file features. We won't be looking at the code itself in detail, although I recommend that you do so. We'll use it as a more interesting template to work from, so you're more familiar when you start writing your own tool. So let's start making your first Xcode project. Here I have Xcode 9 open, and this is the welcome screen. We have some options here. The second option is create a new Xcode project. We can also go to the File menu, New, Project, and here we're given a selector of various different templates for projects for different platforms. We have iOS, watchOS, tvOS, cross-platform, and we're going to make a Mac OS command line tool project. Click Next, and we need to name the project. I'm going to put example tool, and we can't have any spaces in the name there. And also I'm going to select Swift for the language. Click Next. I'm going to save to the desktop here, and also I'm going to select create a Git repository on my Mac. And here we have the project created. And we have the main file here. We're just simply printing hello world. Now let's try adding a file to the project. On the left here we have the navigator. We have the main.swift file. This is a group here. Example tool is the default created group. If I right click here, I can say new file. I can also go into the file menu, file, new file. So most of the time you'll be wanting to create a Swift file, is just a blank Swift file. So let's go ahead and create a new file, and we need to save this inside the project folder. Let's call it my struct, and we also need to select which target this file will be compiled into. We only have one target, and select or deselect here, and also select which group we're going to add it to, and we've already selected that because we had the example tool group selected when we created the new file. Let's create that new file, and here we have the mystruct.swift new source file. Let's define a struct, and if we go into the main.swift file, because your project defines a module, we can easily create an instance of mystruct. It will be accessible inside your module. Now that we've created some files, let's look at the source control features for committing files to a Git repository. I selected creating a local Git repository, so if we go to the source control menu and commit, we have this browser here which shows the files that have changed. So I have the new project, the mystruct.swift file I created, and the main.swift file which was created automatically. Let's add a message at the bottom here, initial commit, and commit those files. Now if I had selected a remote repository, I would be able to go to the source control menu and push, but I'm just using a local repository for now. Okay, now let's try downloading and opening the AV Foundation Exporter sample code project. Here I am on the website. You'll note that this project requires Xcode 8. We have the download sample code button here. Let's click that button and download the project. And close Safari. And in my downloads, I now have the sample project. You'll see that most sample projects have Objective-C and Swift versions. We're interested in the Swift version. And we have here the project file, AV Foundation Exporter. Now I need to open this in Xcode 8. Now when we download projects from the internet, we'll get this security warning. We should always be careful to download Xcode projects from safe sources. Here is the URL, developer.apple.com, so we know this is safe. Let's open the project. And you see we have this warning here, convert to current Swift syntax. So this can be an issue with sample code projects. Sometimes they get a little bit out of date. So we need to convert this project to Swift 3, which we can do in Xcode 8 automatically by clicking the convert button. And this project has only one target, which is already automatically selected. So let's continue with the next button. And Xcode will start building the project in order to calculate the changes that are required to update to the nearest version. You see we have this browser here, similar to the Git window. So I'm just going to accept those changes with save. And now the project is updated to Swift 3. Okay, so now we have the project converted to Swift 3 and open. Let's try building and running it. So if you look in the product menu, we have the options run and build. And note also the keyboard shortcuts on the right hand side, Command R for run and Command B for build. I recommend you using the keyboard shortcuts. They're much more convenient than opening the product menu. So let's close the product menu and build the project with Command B. Okay, and you see we had an error here when we built the project. So let's open the build results panel on the left hand side, which is the alert icon here. And you see we have a list of build results, warnings in yellow, and one error in red. So we don't need to fix the warnings to build the project, although it's always a good idea to investigate warnings. But we do need to fix this error. So if we click on the error, we'll be taken to the line where the error occurred. and the error we have is initializer for conditional binding must have optional type, not string. So what happened here is the Swift 3 auto migrator wasn't able to fix this API change. The path method here previously returned an optional but has now been changed to a string value. So we're going to have to fix this error ourselves. I'm going to fix this just by taking the let out of the conditional and placing it before. Also, I'm going to delete the conditional. And notice our code is now a little bit messy, so we can take advantage of a feature called reindent, which is in the editor menu under structure. And it also has the keyboard shortcut Control I, which I recommend using. So if we close the menu, press Control I, you'll see our code is neatly reindented. Now that we've fixed that error, let's try building the project again with Command B, and you'll see that the build succeeded this time. So now that we have a successful build, let's try running the project by pressing Command R, and once the project has run, the debug area will open at the bottom, and on the right hand side we have the console output, and on the left hand side the debug panel. We can control these panels with these two buttons on the right hand side, and this is the console output from the command line tool. Now that we've built and run the AV Foundation Exporter project, let's explore in a little bit more detail. We have the left panel here, the navigator panel. If we click on the left icon, we're taken back to the file browser. We have one group here, AV Foundation Exporter, containing two files, main and argument parsing. We also have here the products group. If we open the products group, you'll see here we have the built product executable of the project. This is a link to the location of the project on disk. If we right click on it, we can click Show in Finder, and I'll be taken here to a Finder window that contains the AV Foundation Exporter executable file. So I can copy this or move it just like a regular file. That's the built executable. Let's close that again. And in Xcode we can manage the panels with these buttons on the right hand side here. In the middle I can close or open the debug area, close or open the navigation area, and also the utilities pane on the right hand side, open and close. Okay, so next let's have a look at the project info section of Xcode. If I select the top level name of the project here in the navigation panel and close the debug area, I'm taken to the project info panel. If I select the project again here on the top, we have the info panel, which contains the highest level information about the project. For example, here we have the deployment target. So deployment targets control the minimum version of the operating system platform in use that we can build for. So in this example, the minimum we can support is Mac OS 10.10, but we could also go all the way back to 10.6, although that might require changes to your code. Let's leave it at 10.10. On the right hand side here we have the build settings panel for the project. So there are a lot of settings in here which we won't look into in detail now. You'll learn about those as your Xcode skills increase. We have the target section here just below. This project has just one target. That's the executable file we saw previously. If we click on the target here, we have the build settings for that target, and a number of other sections which we won't need to look at right now and aren't always applicable to command line targets. Next, let's look at managing schemes in Xcode. A scheme is a set of configurations for a particular target. This project has one target, but we're able to configure this target to be built, run, or tested, or archived in various different configurations. If you look at the top here, we have the name of the target again, AV Foundation Exporter, and it's pointing to my Mac, so we're building this project for Mac OS. If we click on the name of the target again, we can see the menu. And if we open the Manage Schemes panel, we'll be taken to the full list of schemes in the project. So we have just one. Let's open it up and have a look at some of the settings by double-clicking. And you'll see that when we create a scheme, we're able to control settings for building it, running it, testing it, profiling it, analyzing it, and archiving it. So for now, we're going to look at the Run panel, and you see we have the Arguments section open already. If you look down at the console output, you'll see that AV Foundation Exporter has a lot of command line options. One is List Presets. So if we'd like to test this command line option from within Xcode without needing to open a terminal window, we can use the Arguments Passed on Launch section to add arguments that we pass to the program. So let's click the plus icon and type in List Presets. When we have this added, we can easily enable and disable it with the tick box. So let's save that, let's close the window, and now when we run the project again, we'll pass that List Presets command line argument to the target. So let's run the project, and in the console window you'll see that this time we received the list of the presets, which was the command line argument that we passed to the AV Foundation Exporter tool.